game to 21st century realities. And I'm not predicting anything here. I'm just fascinated by it.
Terrific. Coming back to the United States, so you're an advisor to Polaris.
Yeah.
And you're also an angel investor. You want to talk a little bit about your activities with Polaris and personally?
Yeah, back to what I talked about before. I'm an advisor to anybody. I mean, Polaris, and a lot of you guys here from Washington, particularly if you're a little bit older, remember Alan Spoon, who's just one of the great figures of Washington business when he was a president of the Washington Post Company when I got to know him as a kid, and he's just a phenomenal guy.
Just a quick story about Alan Spoon was I had him on speed dial on my fax machine because we took all the phone calls for WashingtonPost.com when you were Digital Ink.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe that Alan Spoon wanted to see daily faxes of how many people had signed up for to get their mailing. So
yeah.
he's probably a real detail guy.
Yeah, fortunately it's an email now, but yeah, absolutely. And he's just amazing. He's one of those rare combinations of being an incredible mind and a wonderfully decent guy, and he was a great board member and all. So, you know, I've always felt particularly wanting to help them out, but honestly, all my investors call me up from time to time and ask me to look something over, to meet with one. I love meeting with the young entrepreneurs and helping them, you know, think through stuff, and so it's been that kind of a thing. I'm an investor in a couple of venture capital funds, one on the West Coast, one not too far from here. And my angel investing is really, I'm still so interested by the future of content and social networks and how that's coming together, and that's pretty much where I put my money.
Where's healthcare information going?
Healthcare information is going there. You know,
in terms of sort of, you know, the disintermediation of sort of the expert doctor, sort of like what you did at Dr. Coop / Health Central. I mean, the democratization of information with respect to health and wellness.
Yeah, so, you know, Health Central, what it was it was a content and social platform in health where millions of people would gather and then they just share their stories, plus we'd bring in other content because people wanted to work about the stuff. But our focus was to go condition by condition, so that if you were, you know, if you were suffering or someone you loved was suffering from breast cancer, we had experiences that really tailored very much for that. What we discovered, which in a way goes to your question, which is an amazing challenge that only technology can help solve, is that, and this is no surprise to any of us who've been through a health thing in our lives, is that in the world of unbelievable ability for us to get what we want in our terms, we are our own vertical. We're not a breast cancer husband or a breast cancer survivor. We are a mother of a certain age with a certain number of children in a certain location with a certain job, and we want to find people like that. I mean, we just want to be connected to these stories and experiences of people like that. I can remember in the early days of Health Central, we went from about 50 websites to about 75 because we went from, for example, a diabetes website to a type 1 to a type 2, then to a juvenile diabetes. It's not scalable. There's no way you could do it with Ning or somebody to build up platforms, but it really wasn't very good. What we found was very good, though, and it had huge ramifications on the way people were searching for health, was to get very sophisticated about the long tail. You know, people who are searching for multiple words or even words that don't mention a disease at all, because that tells you so much about really what they're thinking about and that positioning. If you could match a long tail description to really, really better content you're already creating, you've actually made people feel like they're in their own experience, even though they're leveraging pieces of your more aggregate experience. And it was a mind blow, man. We had people who would come to us, literally who would type in 32 words in a search string. I mean, if you're typing 32 words in a search string, you're having a conversation with technology. And so that wasn't average, but average was probably 12. And so this is a kind of a description about both the opportunity and challenge of what's going on in health. I have a lot of doctor friends who say it drives them crazy that patients now more and more show up with a printout from websites like ours, you know, but that ship has sailed. I mean, people are going to do it. People know that on average they'll get at most 13 minutes with their doctor. They know their doctors can only help them with certain aspects of their lives. So this is only the tip of the iceberg of people really finding what they need and helping people who have similar sort of demographics of themselves get through it.
Yeah, it's a terrific website. I want to thank you because, you know, I use it also and my family does. It's wonderful service you've done to the community. We're going to open it up for questions. Lori's going to walk around with a microphone. So I have one final question, and then we'll open it up to the floor for 5 or 10 minutes. We have a lot of entrepreneurs in the room. You've been there, done it. You've raised money, exited. What, if you had to distill it down to 1 or 2 pieces of advice, including all the key learnings you've had and ups and downs and whatnot, what kind of words would you give to the entrepreneurs in this room?
You know, there are a million things and all, and partly starting, I hate to channel Bill Clinton, but I feel your pain, you know. I mean, when I first started up Health Central in particular, which was really a more classic startup, I was more of an entrepreneur in the other companies that I ran. I got an email from a very good friend of mine in Silicon Valley who said, welcome to the space, meaning entrepreneurship, where there are 2 and only 2 emotions. He said, there's total euphoria and abject fear. And in the first year, man, every day, literally, there were times in the morning where I'm like, this is going to be the biggest thing that's ever happened, and other times thinking like, that old job didn't look so bad, and you just, it just, I mean, just is, and you see it over. We in the first 2 years, we got close to what would have been effectively bankruptcy probably 3 times when we actually finally started, when people started expressing an interest in buying us. At one point we had 6 people waltzing with us, some of them serious, others not, and those deals almost died 100 times. I mean, you just got to steel yourself to the mast, and wonderful, one of the great DC area entrepreneurs, David Bradley, who many of you know better than I do, has a wonderful thing that always stuck with me. He said, life is much more of a sine wave than an arrow. We who are ambitious think that, all of our careers are always going to be like this, but in reality, it's like this. You hope it tends up, but sometimes it doesn't. What matters is not that, because that's a fact, but what matters is how you are in the trough. So if you're in the trough and you can keep a hold of yourself and realize this is temporary, and in some form you'll be back there again, it's one of the most powerful mental frameworks that you can have. Second, last thing, I'm sorry to go on, but don't be intimidated. Jesus, do not be intimidated by money. People somehow or other think that the money guy, forgive me, David, you can tell me I'm wrong, as you've been on both sides of the ledger. But the fact is that there's nothing golden about these people, right? What's golden is that you have enough chutzpah to get out there and to try to make things happen. And when people start to flirt with you and they all tell you the right things in the early stage, it can just be a breathtaking time suck. You can get mentally thinking, they love me, they don't love me, they love me, they don't. It's all nonsense. It's nonsense. What I think is the best thing to do is what we started this conversation with, is just the people are as important as the money. All the promises of imprimatur pale in comparison to the energy that person will step in or step out based on your instructions. And to be intimidated by it or to be in awe of it is a very repeated and profound mistake.
Thank you. I think we have